Define force as a push or pull. For example, hitting a nail. When you hit the nail, you exert force on the nail. Pulling an object. When you pull an object, you exert force on that object. Pushing a chair. When you push this chair, you exert force on it. As a result, the chair is moving. Kicking something. When you kick this punching box, you exert force on it. Lifting something above the earth's surface. When you lift this dumbbell or rod above the earth's surface, you exert force on it. Thus, from all these examples, we learn that in our daily life, we exert force on different objects in order to do different types of work. We either pull objects or push objects. Therefore, we define force as a push or pull. Thus, when you listen or read the word force, think that it is either pulling objects or pushing objects. Now, the second important concept which a lot of people do not try to learn is the effects of force. Remember that when you exert force on an object, it produces 5 different types of effects in an object. The first effect of force is that it produces motion or acceleration in an object. Let's consider a football at rest, a stationary football. When you kick the football, motion produces in the football in this direction. Now the question is that why the football moves when you kick it? Well, it is because when you kick it, you exert force on it. The force produces motion in it. A force changes its state of rest. Thus remember that force can produce motion in stationary objects or objects at rest. Secondly, force stops moving objects. Consider that a fast-moving football approaches toward this player or goalkeeper. How can this player stop this fast-moving football? Well, he uses his both hands and exert force on it. As a result, he stops the fast-moving football. One another example is that when a fast-moving car suddenly applies brakes, due to applied force on the tires, a car suddenly stops. Thus remember that force can stop a moving object. Thirdly, force changes direction of a moving object. Let's consider that a fast tennis ball is moving in this direction, hit by your opponent. Now you hit this tennis ball in this direction. Well, when you hit the tennis ball, you exert force on it. As a result, tennis ball will move in this direction. Initially, it was moving in this direction, but due to your force, it starts moving in opposite direction. Thus, remember that force can change the direction of a moving object. Fourthly, force increases speed of a moving object. For example, your car is moving at a speed of 40 meters per second. Now you want to speed up your car. What you do? Well, you push the accelerator. As a result, engine force speeds up the car. Thus remember that force can speed up a moving object. Fifthly, force changes shape of an object, which we also call deforming force. For example, let's consider this empty can. You exert force on this can. Now what happens? Well, due to your force, its shape changes, or you can say its dimension changes. Such force is also known as a deforming force. Thus remember that force can change the shape or dimensions of an object. Until now, we have learned that force produces motion in an object. Secondly, force stops a moving object. Thirdly, force changes direction of a moving object. Fourthly, force increases speed of a moving object. And fifthly, force changes shape or dimensions of an object. Do you know that forces are divided into two types? I mean contact forces and non-contact forces. Well, now what are contact forces? Let's consider when you push this chair, you need to touch the chair in order to move or to push it. Secondly, when you pull this box, you need to wrap the string around it and then you pull the string. But still there is contact between you and this box. Thus we can say that pushing force and pulling force are contact forces. Without physical contact, you can't push or pull objects. Now what are non-contact forces? Well, when you raise an object above the Earth's surface, it experiences a downward force known as a gravitational force. Although there is no physical contact between the object and the earth, but still the object experiences downward pull or downward force of Earth's gravity. Thus, gravitational force is a non-contact force. Secondly, magnetic force is also a non-contact force. Thirdly, electric force is also a non-contact force. For instance, the attraction force between proton and electron in an atom. Hence, note it down that gravitational force, magnetic force, and electric force are all non-contact forces. They either attract objects or repel objects without any physical contact. At last, let me quickly teach you the very important concept of balanced forces and unbalanced forces. Let's consider that a football is present on the Earth's surface at rest. Does this stationary football experience any force or forces? Well, the answer is yes. This stationary football or this football at rest experiences two forces. It experiences the downward force of gravity or gravitational force and the upward force of ground or normal force. So this football experiences two forces. Now you may be thinking, or you should ask this question, if this football experiences two forces, then why it isn't moving or why it isn't accelerating? Well, let me explain it. Let's consider that there is 100 Newton force acting on this football in downward direction. Then at the same time, there is also 100 Newton force acting on this football in upward direction. Thus, the 100 Newton downward force of gravity and the 100 Newton upward force of ground cancel out or balance each other. I mean, the net or the total force on this football is 0. Remember that if the net or total force on an object is 0, we say that forces are balanced, or we say balanced forces. Thus, these both forces are balanced. Due to balanced forces or due to 0 net forces, this football is not moving or this football is at rest. Now let's consider another case. You kick this football. The football will start moving, or more precisely, it is accelerated. You can ask, why now the football is moving? Well, it is simply because of your kick. Although the vertical forces are balanced are 0, but when you kick it, you exert enough horizontal force on it that the net external force is no more 0. The football therefore starts moving, or it is accelerated in horizontal direction. Remember that when net force on object is not 0, we call it unbalanced forces. Here is one bonus tip for you. Why this football stops here? When you kick it in this direction and it starts moving, The ground force or friction force resists the motion of this football in opposite direction. This friction force resists the motion of this football until it completely stops it. What will happen if there is no friction? Well, if there is no friction, it will continue its state of uniform motion. For example, if football moves with 10 meter per second speed, no friction means football will move with 10 meter per second ever and forever. Therefore, remember that when forces are balanced, object remains at rest. Like in this case, our object will move.